26-year-old black teacher Grant's bully's last wish before his expulsion. Maya Thompson stood in front of the classroom, taking a deep breath before turning to face the students. She was only 26, fresh out of college, and this was her first job as a high school teacher. She had dreamed of this moment for years, of inspiring young minds and shaping the future. But reality had quickly set in. The class she was assigned to was known for being one of the most difficult in the entire school. It was filled with restless teenagers who seemed more interested in disrupting than learning. Maya had tried everything, rules, rewards, and even stern warnings, but it felt like nothing worked. She couldn't shake the feeling that her authority was slipping through her fingers like sand. The classroom was a battlefield, and she was the only one trying to keep it together. And then there was Jason Mitchell. Jason was 17, tall, with a presence that seemed to fill every corner of the room. He had a reputation for being the class bully, and it wasn't just a rumor. He had made life difficult for countless students, often using his size and charm to intimidate others. Maya had seen it all. He'd thrown paper airplanes at students, made cruel jokes, and even once mocked a classmate's disability in front of everyone. He didn't seem to care about the consequences of his actions, and the other students followed his lead. At first, Maya tried to ignore him. But ignoring Jason was like trying to ignore a storm in the middle of the ocean. His loud voice, sharp words, and unruly behavior overshadowed everything else. His antics made teaching nearly impossible, and she had begun to dread every minute spent in that classroom. There was a part of her that wanted to give up and let him get expelled. But Maya couldn't help but feel there was more to Jason than the troublemaker everyone else saw. One afternoon, as the bell rang to signal the end of the school day, Maya stayed behind to clean up. She had just finished wiping down the whiteboard when she noticed Jason standing by the door, his backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder. He didn't look like he was about to leave. "Ms. Thompson," Jason said, his voice sounding unusually calm. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Maya turned, surprised. "What's on your mind, Jason?" For a moment, he didn't say anything, just looked down at the floor. It was the first time she had seen him not put on a show for his classmates. There was a hesitation in his eyes that she hadn't expected. "I don't know what you see in me," he started slowly. "I know I've been a pain in the ass and I probably deserve to get kicked out of here, but I don't know. I think I should say something." Maya blinked, unsure of where this was heading. "What do you want to say?" Jason lifted his head, meeting her gaze for the first time without any defiance or mockery. "I don't know why I do it. I guess it's because I never feel like I fit in. My dad's not around, my mom's barely home, and this whole place," he gestured around the classroom, "it just feels like a joke to me. I don't know how to deal with it. So I act out, but I don't want to be this way anymore." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't the Jason she had grown accustomed to. This was a different side of him, one that was raw and vulnerable. She had never considered the possibility that Jason's bullying might stem from something deeper. She had assumed he was just another arrogant teenager who enjoyed the power he held over others. But now as she looked at him, she realized that maybe she had misunderstood him all along. "I'm not saying I want a free pass," Jason continued, his voice a little shakier now. "I know I've messed up and maybe I deserve what's coming to me, but I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. I don't want to be the guy who ruins everything for everyone." Maya was silent for a moment, taking in his words. Her heart ached for him. She had seen countless students struggle with their own battles, but she never expected Jason, of all people, to be so open about his pain. "I appreciate you saying that, Jason," she said softly, walking over to where he stood. "But actions speak louder than words. If you really want to change, you'll need to show me and the others that you can be different." Jason nodded, his eyes not quite meeting hers. "I get it, I will. I promise." For the first time in weeks, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was something she could do after all. The next few days were a blur. Maya kept a close eye on Jason, trying to see if he would follow through on his promise. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she was cautiously optimistic. To her surprise, Jason's behavior started to shift. He was quieter in class, more engaged with the lessons, and though he still had moments of defiance, they were fewer and farther between. It wasn't perfect. There were still the occasional outbursts, but Maya could see that something had changed. Jason wasn't just trying to follow the rules, he was trying to understand himself. And that was something she had never seen in him before. But it didn't last long. One morning, Maya received a call from the principal's office. She could tell by the tone in the secretary's voice that this wasn't a good sign. "Ms. Thompson," the secretary said, "Jason Mitchell's been involved in another incident. The administration is considering expulsion. You'll need to come to a meeting this afternoon." Maya's heart sank. She had been hoping that Jason was finally turning a corner, but it seemed like he was right back where he started. This time, however, Maya wasn't ready to give up on him. She had seen a different side of him, a side that wanted to change, and she wasn't going to let that go without a fight. At the meeting, the administrators were firm in their stance. Jason's behavior had crossed the line one too many times, and they believed expulsion was the only option left. Maya tried to make her case, arguing that Jason had made progress, but it seemed like her words fell on deaf ears. When the meeting ended, Maya stood outside the principal's office, feeling defeated. She knew Jason's future at the school was hanging by a thread, and there was little she could do to stop it. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story. Jason's apology, his attempt at change, those weren't just empty words. They were a cry for help. She just didn't know how much longer he could hold on. Maya woke up that morning with a sense of foreboding, an unease she couldn't shake off. The events of the previous day, the meeting with the school administrators, Jason's possible expulsion, had been on her mind all night. It felt like everything she had worked for was slipping away, and she didn't know how to stop it. She had been teaching for less than a year, and yet it felt as if she had invested a lifetime's worth of energy into her students. Maya had always dreamed of being a teacher, of making a difference in the lives of young people, but what if she wasn't enough? What if Jason's situation was beyond repair? What if there was nothing she could do to save him from the consequences of his actions? Despite her doubts, she pushed herself to get out of bed, to face the challenges of the day. As she prepared for her class, Maya reflected on the previous weeks. Jason had shown signs of change. He had apologized to his classmates, something she never thought he would do. But those moments of vulnerability had been fleeting. In the end, it seemed like they had been overshadowed by the long history of his misdeeds. Maya arrived at school earlier than usual, hoping to catch Jason before his first class. She needed to talk to him, to let him know that she still believed in him, even if the world didn't. But as she walked down the hallway, she saw Jason standing outside the principal's office, his arms crossed over his chest, a defiant look on his face. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't how she had imagined their conversation going. She approached him slowly, trying to keep her voice calm. "Jason," she said, "can we talk?" He glanced at her but didn't respond immediately. His expression was hard to read, a mix of anger and resignation. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Guess I'm done for, huh?" Jason's voice was quieter than usual, almost regretful. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She knew this was a turning point not just for Jason, but for herself as well. She could see that the decision made by the school wasn't just about his future. It was about everything he had ever known. Jason had been a victim of the system long before he became a bully. His broken home, his strained relationship with his peers, his anger, all of it had built up over the years, creating the person standing before her now. But Maya refused to give up. "You still have a choice, Jason," she said firmly. "You've come this far. Don't let it end like this." Jason's eyes softened for a brief moment, but his walls quickly went back up. "What am I supposed to do?" "I've messed up too many times." Maya stepped closer, her voice steady but filled with compassion. "You've made mistakes, Jason, but that doesn't define you. What matters is what you do next." Jason looked at her, searching her face as though trying to find something that could give him hope. "You really think I can turn this around? After everything I've done?" "I think you've already started to," Maya replied, her voice full of conviction. "But you have to show them. You have to show yourself that you can change." He was quiet for a long moment, clearly conflicted. Then, in a tone that surprised her, he asked, "What if I can't?" Maya placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him the kind of support she had always longed to give. "You'll never know until you try. Let me help you. Let's take it one step at a time." Jason looked down at the ground, his jaw clenching as if he was grappling with something internal. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." The bell rang, signaling the start of the school day, but Maya felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. Maybe Jason wasn't beyond saving after all. Perhaps the battle wasn't lost yet. As the students filed into the classroom, she felt an unexpected surge of determination. This wasn't just about teaching anymore. It was about helping Jason make a choice to change. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Maya found herself lost in her lessons, trying to keep her focus on the students in front of her, but in the back of her mind, Jason's situation lingered. She kept replaying their conversation over and over, wondering if she had said the right things, if he truly understood what was at stake. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. She had seen too many students fall through the cracks, too many chances slip by without anyone ever taking action. But this time she was determined to make a difference. After the final bell rang and the students left for the day, Maya found herself standing in the empty classroom, staring at the whiteboard as the words "You have a choice" echoed in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment, not just for Jason, but for herself too. This was her chance to be the mentor she had always wanted to be. She couldn't let it slip away. Just as she was about to gather her things, her phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from the principal's office. She hesitated for a moment, her heart racing. She had a bad feeling about it. But when she opened the message, it was a request for another meeting. Her stomach twisted with anxiety as she read the message. It was a formal meeting to discuss Jason's expulsion, and she was expected to be there to present her case. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. This was it, the moment when she would either save Jason or watch him be lost to the system forever. As she left the classroom and walked toward the principal's office, Maya knew this was the turning point. She had to fight for Jason, not just as his teacher, but as the person who believed in him when no one else did, and she wasn't about to back down. The sound of Maya's heels echoed down the hallway as she walked toward the principal's office. Her heart pounded in her chest, her thoughts swirling. She had never been in a situation like this before, and the weight of what was about to happen was heavier than she could have imagined. Jason's future was on the line, and it felt like she was holding his fate in her hands. She had no idea how this meeting would go, but she knew she had to try. When she arrived at the principal's office, she was greeted by the stern faces of the administration team, Principal Alvarez, Vice Principal Harper, and the head of discipline, Ms. Dunning. They all looked at her expectantly, but no one spoke. Maya took her seat, trying to steady her nerves. She had prepared her arguments, rehearsed her points, but now that she was here, all the words seemed to escape her. Principal Alvarez spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "Ms. Thompson, we've reviewed Jason Mitchell's record, and we're all aware of his repeated behavioral issues. His actions have caused significant disruption in the classroom, and this latest incident," he glanced down at the file in front of him, "has crossed the line. We believe it's time for his expulsion." Maya nodded slowly, her mind racing. She knew they had already made up their minds. Jason's behavior had been problematic, to say the least, and the administration was tired of giving him second chances. But Maya couldn't give up on him, not after everything she had seen in the past few weeks. "I understand, Principal Alvarez," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I believe Jason is capable of change. I've been working with him, and I've seen something different in him. He's trying. He's not the same person he was when he first walked into my classroom." Vice Principal Harper raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Thompson, we appreciate your optimism, but it's been months. How many more chances do we give a student who continues to disrupt the class, refuse authority, and hurt others?" Maya felt a sharp pang in her chest. She knew it wasn't just about the classroom disruptions anymore. Jason had hurt people, his classmates, teachers, even himself. His bullying had deep roots, and it was clear that his behavior was a cry for help. But how could she make them understand that? "I'm not asking for him to be excused from his actions," Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. "I'm asking for one more chance, for him to show that he can make amends. He has a genuine desire to change, and I believe we can help him do that." Ms. Dunning, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. "And what exactly does this amendment look like? What do you propose we do to make sure Jason doesn't fall back into his old habits once he's allowed to stay?" Maya took a deep breath, preparing to say the words she knew would be the most important ones. "I've spoken to Jason. He understands the gravity of the situation. He's willing to make a public apology to the students he's hurt, to take responsibility for his actions. He wants to show his classmates that he can be better. But I need your help to give him that opportunity." There was a long pause as the room fell into silence. Principal Alvarez exchanged a glance with Vice Principal Harper, who then turned to Ms. Dunning. Maya watched their faces carefully, hoping for a sign that they were at least considering her request. The tension in the room was thick, and she could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. Finally, Principal Alvarez spoke again. "Miss Thompson, we value your dedication to your students, but we also have to consider the safety and well-being of the entire student body. If we allow Jason to remain, what guarantee do we have that he won't revert to his old ways?" Maya looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment that would determine whether or not Jason got a second chance. "I can't guarantee that he won't make mistakes," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "but I can promise you this. I will be there every step of the way, guiding him, holding him accountable. He's not alone in this." She let her words hang in the air, hoping they would resonate with the administrators. For the first time in the meeting, she saw a flicker of doubt in their eyes. They were considering her argument, weighing the possibility that Jason could change. She had to hold on to that spark of hope. "We'll consider your proposal," Principal Alvarez said after a long pause, "but we need to see concrete evidence that Jason is willing to follow through. We can't afford another failure. If we give him a second chance, he'll need to prove himself in ways that go beyond words." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she had a small victory. Jason wasn't being expelled just yet. There was a chance, a real chance, that he could turn his life around. The next day, Maya sought out Jason after school. She found him sitting alone on the steps outside the school building, his shoulders slumped and his eyes downcast. It was the same place he had been every day, waiting for his fate to be decided. But today, Maya wasn't going to let him sit in silence. Today, she was going to give him the chance he needed. "Jason," she called softly, walking up to him. He looked up, his face a mixture of confusion and hope. "Ms. Thompson, did they expel me?" Maya sat down beside him, offering him a small smile. "Not yet, but we have a chance. They're giving you one final opportunity, but you have to show them that you're ready to change." Jason's eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and gratitude flooding his face. "You mean, I'm not done for?" "No," Maya said gently, "but you have to prove to everyone, including yourself, that you can be better. You can't keep running from your mistakes. You have to face them head on." He nodded slowly, as if processing her words. "I want to do better, Ms. Thompson, I really do. I'm just scared. What if I mess up again?" Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone messes up, Jason. It's what you do after that matters. You don't have to do this alone. I'm here to help you, but you have to take the first step." Jason sat in silence for a long time, his gaze fixed on the ground. Finally, he looked up at her, a new determination in his eyes. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "I'll try. I don't want to be the person I've been. I want to be better." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "That's all I need to hear." The following days passed in a blur, each one more intense than the last. Maya felt a weight on her shoulders that she couldn't shake, but it wasn't the same kind of weight that came with simply teaching. No, this was personal. This was Jason. She had promised him a chance, and now she had to make good on that promise. But the pressure of knowing that his future rested in her hands was daunting, and every moment felt like it was building towards something that could either destroy him or allow him to finally find the redemption he was seeking. Jason had been showing subtle signs of progress. He had stopped interrupting the class, no longer making snide remarks or disrupting the lessons. He had even apologized to a couple of students in private, acknowledging the hurt he had caused. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maya could see that he was genuinely trying to change, but the truth was, he was still terrified. Terrified of failing again, terrified of being rejected, terrified of the consequences of his actions. One afternoon, as Maya was preparing for her next class, she saw Jason standing by her door. His usual bravado was gone, his posture was slumped, and his hands were shoved deep into his pockets as if he was trying to hide from the world. When their eyes met, he gave her a weak smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. She could tell something was wrong. "Jason, what's going on?" Maya asked, her voice soft but firm. He hesitated before stepping into the classroom, his eyes darting around as if he was trying to find the right words. "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can stand in front of everyone and admit what I've done. It's too much." Maya felt a pang of sympathy for him. She knew exactly what he was feeling. The fear of facing his past, of confronting the pain he had caused, was paralyzing. It was easy to act tough, to be the person everyone feared, but facing the truth, that was the hardest thing to do. And Jason was at that crossroads now. "You don't have to do it alone," Maya said, her voice filled with understanding. "You've already taken the first step by admitting that you want to change. That's not easy, Jason. But facing your past, that's part of it too, and I'll be with you every step of the way." Jason shook his head, a look of frustration crossing his face. "But what if no one believes me? What if they just see me as the same person I was before? What if they don't care?" Maya reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "They will care, Jason. They might not understand right away, but you'll show them. It's not about what they think, it's about what you do now. If you're sincere, if you show them you're willing to put in the work, that's what matters. You can't change the past, but you can shape the future." He looked down at the ground, his fists clenching in frustration. "I've hurt so many people, Miss Thompson. How can I ever make up for that? How can I fix what I've broken?" Maya's heart broke for him. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the burden he carried on his shoulders. It was clear that he didn't know how to begin making amends for the things he had done, for the people he had hurt. But Maya believed that every person, no matter how far gone they seemed, had the ability to change. And Jason? He had the potential to do more than just change. He had the potential to inspire others, to show them that no one was beyond redemption. "I know it feels impossible right now, but the first step is always the hardest," she said gently. "Making amends isn't about erasing what's been done. It's about acknowledging the hurt and showing that you are committed to being better." Jason's eyes filled with uncertainty, but there was something different in his expression now, something that hinted at the possibility of hope. "You really think I can change?" Maya nodded. "I believe in you, Jason, and I believe in your ability to do the right thing. You don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be willing to try." The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Jason took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something he didn't quite know how to face. "I'll try," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Maya smiled, offering him a reassuring nod. "That's all I need to hear." The next morning, Jason stood at the front of the classroom, his hands trembling as he faced the students he had once tormented. The room was unusually quiet, the students sensing the gravity of the moment. Maya stood at the back of the room, her heart racing. She had never seen Jason like this, vulnerable, unsure, and yet determined to make things right. For a moment, there was complete silence. Jason took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room. He didn't look at anyone for too long, almost as if he was afraid to make eye contact. Maya could see the weight of his words pressing down on him, but then slowly he began to speak. "I know I've hurt a lot of you." Jason's voice was shaky, but it carried the weight of sincerity. "I've said things that I shouldn't have, done things that I shouldn't have. I've made life harder for people who didn't deserve it. And I'm sorry." Maya could see the disbelief on the faces of some of the students. They didn't know how to react. Jason had never shown this side of himself before, and for many of them, it was hard to believe that the person standing before them was the same Jason they had once feared. But as he continued, his voice grew stronger, more confident. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he continued, his gaze flicking briefly to Maya before returning to the students. "I know I don't deserve it, but I want to be a better person. I want to change, and I want to show you that I can. I can't change what I've done, but I can change what I do from here on out. And I promise you I'll try my best." The silence in the room was thick, heavy with emotion. For a moment it felt as if time had stopped. But then, to Maya's surprise, Tara, the shy girl who had once been a victim of Jason's bullying, stood up. She walked toward him, her eyes filled with something unexpected: compassion. "I accept your apology, Jason," she said softly, her voice quiet but firm. "It's not easy to admit when you've hurt someone, and it takes courage to stand up and say you're sorry. I don't know if we can be friends, but I appreciate that you're trying." Jason blinked, his face softening as he looked at Tara. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful." The class remained quiet for a moment, and then slowly other students began to speak up. One by one, they offered their own words of forgiveness, acknowledging Jason's attempt to make things right. Some were still wary, unsure if this change was real, but Maya could see that a shift was happening. Jason had begun to break down the walls he had built around himself, and in doing so, he had started to rebuild the trust he had once lost. Maya's heart swelled with pride as she watched Jason speak from the heart. This was what she had been fighting for, a chance for him to redeem himself, a chance for him to prove that change was possible, even for someone like him. Jason's apology wasn't the end. It wasn't a magic fix that made everything right, but it was a beginning of a journey that would be difficult, full of setbacks and obstacles. But as Maya stood there, watching him take that first step toward redemption, she couldn't help but believe that he had the strength to keep going. Jason stood at the front of the class, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the edges of the desk in front of him. The room felt colder than usual, the silence stretching out like an unspoken tension. Every student's gaze was on him, their eyes filled with skepticism, curiosity, and, in some cases, judgment. This wasn't a regular class presentation. This was Jason's chance to undo years of hurt, years of bullying, and years of being a person others feared. Maya sat in the back of the room, her heart pounding. She had witnessed Jason's transformation from the chaotic, unruly student to someone trying for the first time to truly own up to his actions. She had been there when he finally admitted to himself that he wasn't just the victim of his environment but also the perpetrator of the pain he had caused. Now all of that change rested on his words. So, Jason started, his voice faltering as he scanned the room. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. I know most of you probably don't care about what I have to say, and frankly, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. And I've hurt a lot of people. I've been that guy, the one who makes everyone uncomfortable, the one who makes fun of people to feel better about myself. He paused, taking a deep breath as he looked down at the floor for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The room was dead silent, and Maya could see that Jason was struggling. But his sincerity was undeniable. I used to think that bullying was just a part of life, that it was normal, that it was my way of dealing with everything. But the truth is, I was just hiding from my own problems, hiding from the fact that I felt worthless at home, hiding from the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I took it out on all of you. I made fun of people. I hurt people. And I never stopped to think about how it affected anyone. I just didn't care. His words were raw, unfiltered, and filled with a sense of regret that Maya hadn't seen in him before. Jason was admitting to the very things that had made him so despised by his peers. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, he was acknowledging the weight of what he had done. But I've been trying to change, Jason continued, his voice quieter now. I know that doesn't undo anything. I know I can't go back and fix the things I've done. But I want to be different. I want to be someone who doesn't hurt people just to feel strong. And I'm sorry for all the things I've said, for all the things I've done. Maya felt a lump form in her throat as she watched him speak. This wasn't just an apology, it was a moment of self-realization. A moment where Jason took responsibility not just for his actions, but for the person he had become. She saw his transformation in those words, in the way he was finally confronting the part of himself that had been so buried under layers of anger and resentment. The room remained silent for a long time. Jason shifted on his feet, looking at his classmates, unsure of what they would say or do next. He had laid himself bare, vulnerable in a way he never had before. His pride, the thing that had fueled so much of his behavior, was nowhere to be found. And as the seconds ticked by, he wondered if his classmates would even care. After all, who was he to ask for their forgiveness? What had he ever done to deserve it? But then someone spoke. Tara, the shy girl he had tormented most, stood up from her seat, her eyes meeting Jason's. Maya had seen her sitting quietly at her desk, but now she was stepping forward, walking slowly toward Jason. There was a calmness in her steps, as if she had already made her decision long before Jason had started speaking. I accept your apology, Tara said softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I know it's hard to admit when you've done something wrong, and I know it takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of everyone and say what you've said. I've been the target of your jokes. I've felt the sting of your words. But I'm not going to hold that against you. I believe you can change. We all can. Jason's face softened at her words, and for the first time he allowed himself to meet her gaze without the walls of arrogance or defiance. There was something in her eyes that he hadn't expected. Understanding, empathy, and perhaps most surprising of all, forgiveness. Thank you, Jason whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't know what else to say, so he simply nodded. There was no need for more words. He had done what he needed to do. One by one, the other students began to speak up. Some offered words of forgiveness. Others shared their own stories of being hurt by Jason's actions. Maya watched as the students, once so divided by Jason's bullying, began to bridge the gap between them. This wasn't just an apology. It was a turning point for everyone in the room. Jason had finally given them something they had all been waiting for: the opportunity to heal. But there were still a few who remained silent. Maya knew that not everyone would accept Jason's apology right away, and that was okay. Change took time, and trust wasn't something that could be earned in a single moment. But what Jason had done, what he had said, was a start. And for Maya, that was enough. The bell rang, signaling the end of the class, and the students began to pack up their things. As Jason stood at the front, still processing the weight of what had just happened, he glanced back at Maya. She gave him a small, encouraging smile, her eyes full of pride. Jason didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. He knew what he had to do. The apology was just the beginning, and there was a long road ahead of him. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he wasn't walking that road alone. The following days felt like a blur for Jason. The weight of his apology had settled into his chest like a heavy stone. For the first time in his life, he felt the uncomfortable sting of vulnerability. The walls he had built up so carefully, brick by brick, had come crashing down with the simple admission of his wrongdoing. And now, in their place, there was an unsettling emptiness, a space that only he could fill. He had expected a lot of things after his apology. He had anticipated laughter, mocking, or even anger from his classmates. After all, he had been the school's bully for as long as he could remember. He had caused pain. He had made people uncomfortable, so why should they forgive him? But what had surprised him most was the kindness, the acceptance. Tara, the girl he had tormented the most, had been the first to offer forgiveness. That was the moment that hit him hardest, the moment when he realized that perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't beyond saving. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing. It was a message from Maya. He had grown used to receiving messages from her, but today's was different. It was a simple sentence: "We need to talk after school. I have something important to discuss with you." Jason's heart skipped a beat. What could this be about? Was she going to tell him that his apology hadn't been enough? That he was still too far gone to be saved? After the final bell rang, Jason hesitated outside the classroom door, his fingers nervously tracing the edge of his phone. He didn't want to face her, not yet. Not until he was sure he was ready. But he knew this moment was coming. He couldn't run from it. Taking a deep breath, he walked into the classroom. Maya was sitting at her desk, grading papers as usual. But there was something different in her expression today, something that made Jason's stomach tighten. "Sit down, Jason," Maya said, her tone gentle but firm. "I have something I need to talk to you about." Jason slowly took a seat, his hands clasped tightly together in his lap. He stared down at his shoes, unsure of what to expect. Was this the end of the road for him? Was she going to tell him that his efforts had been in vain? Maya placed her pen down and looked at him with a soft smile. "I'm proud of you, Jason." Jason looked up at her in surprise. "What?" "I'm proud of how far you've come," she said, her voice steady. "The apology, the way you've handled yourself. It's not easy to face the truth about your actions, especially when you've spent so long hiding from it. But you did it, and that's a big step." Jason felt his chest tighten. He had been expecting something harsh, something critical. But instead, Maya's words felt like a warm blanket, comforting him in a way he didn't know he needed. "Thanks, Miss Thompson," he mumbled, feeling a mix of gratitude and shame. "I don't know if I'm really doing enough, though. I feel like I'm just pretending to be better." Maya leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Jason, no one expects you to be perfect. The people who care about you don't want you to pretend. They want you to be real. And what you're doing now, that's real. You're being honest with yourself, with others, and that's all anyone can ask for. But you have to keep going. This isn't a one-time thing. It's a journey." Jason stared at her, trying to process her words. It felt strange to hear someone speak to him like this. No one had ever believed in him like Maya did. No one had ever told him that change was possible. And yet here she was, encouraging him to keep going, to keep fighting for a better version of himself. "Do you really think I can do it?" Jason asked quietly. Change. Do you really think I can be a different person? Maya smiled softly, her eyes full of warmth. I know you can, Jason, I've seen it. But it won't be easy. You'll slip up. There will be times when you'll doubt yourself. But that's okay. What matters is that you keep moving forward. You don't give up on yourself. Jason nodded slowly, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of her words, the weight of her belief in him. But it wasn't just about what Maya thought. It was about him. Could he really change? Could he really leave behind the version of himself that had caused so much pain? Before Jason could respond, Maya handed him a piece of paper. He looked down at it, confused. It was a list of tasks, goals, and personal commitments that Maya had written down for him. It wasn't a punishment or a set of rules. It was a roadmap, a way forward. I know you're capable of more, Jason, she said gently. This is your chance to prove it, to yourself and to the people around you. Jason took the paper from her, feeling the weight of it in his hands. It wasn't just a list. It was a symbol of the second chance he had been given, a chance he wasn't going to throw away. I'll do it, Jason said, his voice firm. I'll follow this. I'll prove I can change. Maya nodded, her smile widening. I believe in you. As Jason left the classroom, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, hope, doubt. But most of all, he felt a sense of purpose. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from his mistakes. He was facing them head-on, and though the road ahead seemed long and uncertain, he knew that he had started something he couldn't undo, not because he was forced to, but because he wanted to. That night, Jason sat at his desk, staring at the list Maya had given him. He read through each task carefully, his fingers tracing the words as if they held the key to his future. There was a lot to do, a lot to prove, but for the first time he felt ready. The days that followed Jason's conversation with Maya were full of ups and downs, but a change was taking root in him. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't a transformation that happened overnight. But Jason was beginning to see himself differently. Every morning when he looked in the mirror, he didn't just see the bully anymore. He saw someone who, for the first time, was starting to believe in the possibility of change. Maya had given him a roadmap, a list of tasks and goals, each one a challenge that would push him out of his comfort zone and force him to face the very things he had been running from for years. He started small, focusing on one thing at a time, apologizing to his classmates, helping out in the community, opening up about his struggles. Each task felt like a mountain to climb, but with Maya's guidance and encouragement, Jason was slowly starting to believe he could reach the top. The first step was the hardest. Apologizing to his classmates. Jason had always assumed that people would hate him forever, that the damage he had done couldn't be undone. But as he began to reach out to those he had hurt, he was surprised by their reactions. Some were cautious, but many were willing to listen. There were even a few who surprised him by offering forgiveness, like Tara, who had been one of his earliest victims. One afternoon after school, Jason stood in the hallway with his heart pounding in his chest. He had just finished talking to Marcus, a student he had picked on for years. Jason had expected anger, maybe even a confrontation, but Marcus had looked at him long and hard before shaking his head and smiling faintly. You know, Jason, I never thought I'd hear you apologize, Marcus had said, his voice soft, but I'm glad you did. I've been waiting for this for a long time. That was when Jason realized something. He wasn't just doing this for himself. He wasn't just trying to fix his reputation. He was trying to make things right with everyone he had hurt. His classmates, the people he had torn down, the people who had once looked at him with fear or anger. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he was making real progress. But there were still moments of doubt. Moments when Jason questioned if this whole thing was a mistake, when he wondered if anyone would ever truly forgive him. It was easy to get caught up in those thoughts, easy to fall back into old patterns. But every time he felt the urge to slip back into his old ways, he reminded himself of the promise he had made to Maya. He wasn't going to give up, not now, not ever again. One day, after weeks of working through his personal challenges, Jason stood in front of the class once more. This time he wasn't delivering an apology. This time he was standing there as someone different, someone who had learned something valuable about himself and the people around him. The room was quieter than usual, the students more focused than ever. They all knew what he had been through. They knew about the apology, about the changes he was trying to make. But today, Jason wasn't just talking about his past mistakes. Today he was going to show them who he could be. "Hey," Jason began, his voice stronger than it had ever been. "I know I've messed up a lot. I'm not here to pretend that everything's okay, but I wanted to say something. I've been trying to be a better person. It's not easy, but I'm getting there. I've hurt a lot of people in this room and I can't take back what I did. But I'm not going to keep making the same mistakes. I promise you that." There was a murmur of surprise, some of the students exchanging glances, but none of them spoke up. Jason felt his hands trembling, but he kept his focus. He wasn't done yet. "I know it's going to take time for some of you to believe me. That's okay, but I'm going to keep trying. And I'm going to show you that I'm not the same person I used to be." When he finished speaking, Jason didn't expect applause, or cheers, or even acknowledgement. But what he did get was something even more powerful: respect. It was in the way the students looked at him, in the quiet nods they gave. For the first time, he felt like he had earned something real, not just from the teachers or his classmates, but from himself. Maya had been watching from the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride. She had always known that Jason had the potential to be more than the person he showed the world. He just needed the right push, the right person to believe in him. And that person had always been him. All she had done was show him that it was possible to believe in himself too. After class, Maya approached Jason as he packed his things. "You did great today," she said, her voice warm with pride. Jason looked at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I couldn't have done it without you, Ms. Thompson. You believed in me when no one else did. And that's everything," Maya smiled back, feeling the weight of his words in her chest. She had always known that Jason had the potential to change. But seeing it for herself, seeing him finally take ownership of his actions, seeing him become someone who wanted to make things right, was a moment she would never forget. "Jason, you did the hard work," Maya said softly. "You faced your past and you didn't run from it. That's what matters. That's what makes all the difference." As Jason left the classroom that day, he felt lighter than he had in years. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be times when he would want to give up, times when he would doubt himself. But for the first time in his life, he knew that he had a choice. He could keep moving forward, keep fighting for the person he wanted to become. And that person? He was someone who wasn't afraid to face his past, someone who was willing to take responsibility for the hurt he had caused, and someone who believed that change was not just possible, but worth fighting for. Maya watched him leave, feeling the satisfaction of knowing that even if Jason stumbled along the way, he would always have one thing to carry with him: the knowledge that he had the strength to keep going no matter how hard it got.